Perfect. And we're going. Joe, this is Inside the Cylinder, and we didn't have to hit the 1, 2, 3 record. How do you feel emotionally right now, knowing that we didn't have the normal kickoff now that we're on YouTube?
I feel good, man. I feel really good about it.
Are you worried about
not have to time things up before you start before you start talking? You know what I mean?
While we're a digital product, things that we do are very analog here at Inside the Cylinder.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little new school mixed with some old school, so we try to take the better half of each.
So we're like the Grant Williams of NBA podcast.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Well, as we said, Inside the Cylinder, your go-to Detroit Pistons podcast on DetroitBadBoys.com. And all wherever you find your podcasts, iTunes and Stitcher and Podcast Addict, Google Play. I'm going to shout out Podcast Addict because that's what I use until the day I die. This is David Fernandez, writer over at Detroit Bad Boys, joined as always by my co-host.
Joey Mack. And I think we need to get to that point, David, where we start video recording these podcasts and throw them up on YouTube.
Yeah. Next season, man. That's when we make it happen. But yeah, we are joined today by Ryan Pravato. I believe I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Pravato, yep.
Awesome. Well, Ryan is also a writer. You've probably seen a ton of his work over at DetroitBadBoys.com. Ryan, if you want to, give the people a shout out on where to find you, get your Pistons takes and whatnot, feel free.
Yeah, well, I'm Prava 88 over at Detroit Bad Boys. Sometimes I'll write quite a lot over there, and sometimes you won't hear from me for a few weeks. But I do use Twitter, but it's not really somewhere I frequent. You can find me RPRAVATO over at Twitter, but like I said, it's mostly just stupid takes and political takes, and I'm not real popular over there in terms of my usage. So, follow at your own risk.
This is like joining. Sorry, go ahead, Joe.
Were you involved in the Pistons Twitter tournament?
I was not, because I didn't. No, I wasn't. No.
Yeah, I was surprised that I was, because I'm not sure I've tweeted in 2019 and lost in the first round. So I was just curious how you did, but that's how I did.
Who won that, Joe?
Joe Truck won that in a controversial fashion. I think there was like a Twitter troll farm or something. Something happened where there was like a weird apology. I don't know. I
kind of or something like.
I don't think there was like payments going on. I just remember it being weird, and like after a certain point, once I saw like enough discourse back and forth, I was like, I don't care about this. But maybe that's just me being salty because he bounced me. I don't know. That's something I'll have to deal with on my own terms. Yeah, so we're here. We're talking draft. So right now the Pistons are picking at 15. And there's a chance that pick gets moved, but we're going about this like they are for sure drafting. And we wanted to get Ryan on because I know that Ryan, you cover, you're kind of the guy that spurts the Pistons draft stuff over at Detroit Bad Boys. I see you comment during the NCAA season a little bit more in the Slack group than others. So I thought you'd be a perfect resource just to kind of take a little bit of a deeper dive on some of the guys that have been mocked to Detroit. And then some of the guys that, are theoretically going to be available around that number 15 pick, just so we can kind of get like give a little sense to people who are listening in on this episode, just about who the hell could be a new Detroit Piston, in like a week. The draft is coming down here very quickly. So things happen really quickly after the finals. Exciting. So it's really exciting. So that's what we have you on.
Is Henry Ellenson going to be available to draft this year?
Oh, God. So. I remember people were stoked about the Henry Ellenson pick, like that he was supposed to be a lot higher. I didn't know much because it's, I guess full disclosure, not really my bag, the draft analysis. But at the same time, I remember everyone was stoked about Henry Ellenson.
Yeah, to be honest, I was too, but I got duped as well.
Well, I think that's a testament to the draft being a crapshoot, right?
Yeah, yeah. There, well, I think I made a comment a couple of days ago on one of the threads. There's going to be sprinkled throughout the first and second round guys that are going to be fringe all-stars or all-stars that we barely know about, but it's up to the teams to figure that out. And I don't have real good faith that the Pistons will be one of those teams, but you never know.
Do you have any faith seeing the production that we've seen out of a guy like Bruce Brown from last year, who was a second round pick? I think he was supposed to be a first round pick going into the draft last year, had he not injured himself during the year. But he really had shown the flash. I mean, he was the starter for the majority of the season. Yeah. And yeah, he clearly has some areas of his game that he needs to fine tune. But does that give you any hope in the organization from a high level to identify talent?
Yeah, maybe I was a little too harsh on him. I do like the Bruce Brown pick a lot. I think he has a high ceiling, provided he can improve his 3-point shot. But yeah, I think Kyrie Thomas, the book's still out on him, even another year or two. We don't know what we have there. But yeah, I have more. I guess to answer your question, I think I have more faith in the Pistons in the second round drafting guy than I do 15. But obviously there's a new regime, so I should, it should be a clean slate. I should be nice to them and not be so negative, right?
Well, it's kind of hard not to just remember all of the history over the past few years. And the unfortunate part is that, Detroit, when they have gotten it right, when they have found that diamond in the rough, they haven't held on to him long enough to realize that that's the case. When you look at guys like Chris Middleton, Spencer Dinwiddie, those are the two that really stick out in the minds of Pistons fans that, should have been guys that should have been held on to. But now they're out there balling in Brooklyn and Milwaukee. So just got to have to watch them from afar at this point.
Yeah. I do miss Dinwiddie a lot, but...
Well, should we get into one of these guys and kind of hop around and talk a little bit more about them and kind of see what it is that we got going on and you see who what we have with who might be the newest Piston come, I don't know, June 20th down the road here?
Well, yeah, I have a quick question for you, Ryan, just from like a high level, like philosophical perspective going into the draft. Do you feel that this is a situation where the Pistons need to draft for need first, or do you think that best player available is a better, perspective in terms of who's available at the 15th slot?
I would say best player available. And the reason is who knows how long Drummond's going to be around. Who knows how long Blake's going to be around. I have a feeling Blake Griffin might not be around that long. He'll be a trade deadline pickup for a team in the next year or two that wants to win now, and he can be that piece. So even though his salary's monstrous, so yeah, if I was the Pistons, I think just pick the best player there. I don't know who that player is, but if it's a center, which it could be, or power forward, they should do it because, they need a lot of guard help. Well, they need a lot of wing help too. They need help everywhere. So it's tough to say, but yeah, they need to. If that guy that they think should have been, drafted top 10 is still there at 15, they need to snatch him. I have a couple guys in mind, but we can get to them later. But
all right, cool. Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think the tough thing for Detroit going into this, you mentioned it. There's needs all over the place. Like if there's not need, like obviously the biggest thing and that the guys that we're going to tackle first are the wings. That's where, you really saw Detroit struggle in the playoffs. That's where you saw them struggle just generally in the entire season, that they weren't really able to identify a true small forward on the roster. Stanley Johnson didn't pan out. Greg Robinson III didn't pan out. So they were really thin there, and they were playing guys that were frankly just undersized. And outmatched, and didn't work out well for them, and they were looked like a JV team when it came to the playoffs. So, but you mentioned it, there's needs all over the place, like backup point guard, or the Reggie Jackson successor. That's a huge need. You look at backup center. We had Zaza out there last year. a guy that, frankly is just a little too old to be getting the job done, and he wasn't very effective towards the end of the season last year. And then you look at backup power forward too. They traded away Henry Ellenson, because he didn't pan out either. And, there's not really much depth there in general. The only area where Detroit seems to have some depth, and a lot of it's like untapped depth, is at the shooting guard spot. So, but let's get into these guys, and I guess let's start off with the first one, and I think maybe the sexiest pick that's been mocked to Detroit that a lot of people seem to be high on, and some people over internally at Detroit Bad Boys is not so high on, is Kevin Porter Jr. He's a 6'6" wing out of USC. He's a freshman. He was a consensus top 5 recruit going into last year. Do you have any initial thoughts on him, other than like the narrative, when it comes to like him, getting suspended? He only played 22 games. What comes off to you from a basketball perspective about Kevin Porter Jr., just moving on to the next level?
Yeah. He's gonna, I don't know, it's probably pretty simplistic, but he's gonna either be really good or really not good, meaning in 2 years he'll be out of the league and playing in China, making a lot of money in China, but he'll be in China. But yeah, he's got a lot of talent there. I think it'll be interesting once he gets that coaching. If obviously not all coaching is equal. There's some teams that have better player development guys than others, but if he can get that coaching and kind of people get him to focus and takes this job seriously, I think he can be. Obviously it looks good on film. Highlights are highlights. He looks great in highlights, but I don't know. He's intriguing. I know Sean Corp over at Detroit Bad Boys doesn't like him too much, and of course Laz is kind of on the fence, maybe leaning towards pro. I'm not quite sure. I remember some of his article. I'm kind of on the fence too. I wouldn't mind the pick because it's kind of swinging for the fences. Yeah, I think probably be interested in what you guys think about him, because I can't say that he's one of the guys I'm super knowledgeable about, but I've read a lot about him, and like I said, it's 50-50.
Joe, you mentioned that you are, you're not on the train. You're not going down to Kevin Porter Jr. alley. You're not there. So what about his game concerns you? I guess from either a Pistons perspective or just from an NBA perspective.
Well, it's not even necessarily his game, like holistically. I think, my primary concern is just his general mental makeup. Like, does he just view himself as a natural bucket getter, and that's something that will like translate better in the NBA? Or is he a guy that's really willing to like put in the work and mold himself within an offense in a manner that maximizes the offense as a whole, and doesn't strictly classify him as just a 2-guard scorer. I also have issues with his shot is super janky. Looks a little bit like Lonzo Ball's kind of shoots on the opposite side of his head, and he shot 52% from the free throw line. So that's pretty telling of how messed up his fundamentals are. So there's going to be a lot of work that has to go into that shot. And he has like some Harden-esque dribble moves, but I struggle with his ability to make decisions once he makes that initial move, to pass or, get into the lane and draw fouls, things of that sort. I mean, the storyline on him is that he loves the step back jumper, and he has a really nice step back move. The jumper needs work, but I just question his overall instincts and just vision, across the offensive floor. But I do think ultimately he does have the highest. I mean, I wouldn't say highest ceilings, because some of these guys like Bull have some high ceilings, but he could be like, he shows flashes of an all-star offensive game. I just don't have faith that he's going to get there. I just see him as a guy who, like Ryan mentioned, could completely flame out of the league because it doesn't necessarily seem like there's much in between there. He's either going to be like, maybe a Nick Young, or he's just not going to change his game to be a role player. So that's what concerns me.
Yeah, I mean, it's something about him is that he did come off the bench while he was at USC, which it doesn't mean everything. Zach Collins is a good example of a guy that came off the bench and, was a deserved top 10 pick. He averaged 9.5 points, 4 rebounds, 1.4 assists per game. So he does have a lot of like the singular, I'm going to create for myself type of moves. Laz actually wrote the article about him in the draft preview for Detroit Bad Boys, mentioning that he only got to the free throw line a couple times a game. Part of that due to his limited minutes, but also part of that to him falling in love with that step back jumper and not utilizing that awesome dribble that he has and that sort of 1-2 punch and head fake to be able to get to the rim. He's really more so settling for jumpers. And you mentioned it, Joe, 52% from the line. He did shoot 41% from three on just over 3 attempts per game, but 52% from the line. Lots of times NBA draft scouts, what they say is, your free throw shooting is more indicative of how well you're going to shoot going into the NBA than your raw like field goal percentage or 3-point percentage, because that has more to do with like, this is what your stroke is. This is super isolated and there's no one guarding you, compared to like, maybe feeling yourself, you're in a rhythm, especially with Kevin Porter Jr. It's really tough to get a read on him because of his minutes, the fact that he only played 22 points per game, and his shot attempts are just not that much, just because those two factors kind of play into everything. So I'm excited. Let's say, hypothetically speaking, if the Pistons drafted him, I would be excited. Like from the sole, like boom or bust, aspect. And honestly, I'm just a sucker for that type of stuff. Like I'm a sucker for like highlight videos just because, it's just fun to watch. It's, and he's shown some really good flashes, both in-game tape, and also, it doesn't really matter when you're being guarded by a guy that's not actually guarding you in like a pro day, but he does seem to have like some pure athleticism. The shot does scare me, but it went in from a high clip from three in college, but who knows if that's going to translate, because Stanley Johnson, I think, shot like 37% from three when he was a freshman. So tough to say, but right now he's my guy. I'm just going to stick with it. And, but I could definitely be, he's my guy, man. Yeah. He's my guy. He's like, he screams like he's 6'6", which is a little undersized for like a true small forward. He's got a 6'9" wingspan.
So he's a shooting guard.
He's a shooting guard. I mean, if he were to play small forward, if they were to play him on the wing, like, he is a shooting guard, but I'm saying like,
let's be honest, guys, though. Let's be honest, Luke Kennard is not the shooting guard of the future. We need a shooting guard, right?
Luke Kennard's my shooting guard of the future.
Not if you want to be a playoff team. I like Luke Kennard too, but as a sixth man, seventh man, he's not physical enough. He's not like Klay Thompson or some of these guys. Luke Kennard, Kevin Porter could be that guy, to push
That's
Luke
kind
Kennard
of a hot take
to another team. Yeah,
it's a very hot take. Kevin Porter, to me, has more of that true, like, I'm going to create separation in the NBA type of game. Like, I have this at a level that Luke Kennard doesn't have. Luke Kennard's a little bit more crafty. Those are the reasons where it's like, if he really can put the pieces together, and this Dwayne Casey coaching staff, this player development staff that was touted coming into, during last summer when the hires were made, those are the elements where it's like, all right, he might thrive in this system and, have a guy like Blake Griffin to look up to. So I'm going to go with him just for now, but also at the same time, a lot of these guys would probably, make me happy or at least get me excited a little bit. But let's move on. We're going, a little too deep here. So here's another shooting guard for you. Now that you mentioned it, now that you said that Luke Kennard is not the shooting guard of the future, what are your thoughts on Tyler Hero from Kentucky, freshman, 6'5", like Luke Kennard, also has that short little wingspan, shorter than his height. Yeah. 14 points, 4.5 boards, 2.5 assists, shot 36% from three, 46% from the floor, and 94% from the free throw stripe. What are your thoughts on him as an NBA prospect, Ryan?
I do like him. I think he'll have a nice long career. Could end up being a JJ Redick type guy. I think his ceiling's a little higher than Kennard. Maybe a little better athlete, a little better, slightly. Not somebody that the Pistons should be taking. So that's all I got to say on that. But yeah, he's got a little. He can hit the shots from all over the court. He's got a little dribble drive in his game. I think he'll improve that, just kind of like how JJ Redick did. But he's got to stick to his strengths, and he'll be a nice player for 10, 12 years. But, anybody who's mocking him to go to Detroit's not really thinking about Detroit's needs. Even if you are a Luke Kennard fan, which I'm kind of, maybe I exaggerate a little bit there. I do like Luke a lot. He's one of the few reasons to actually follow the team, because he's a good young player, and there's not many of them on the team. But if you plug in Luke for the next 5 years at shooting guard, who's basically pretty much the same size, maybe a little taller than Tyler, there's really no reason at 15 either swing for the fences or go, with a big guy like Joe was saying, the best player available. So, but yeah, I don't want to go too deep on Tyler.
That's fair. I didn't think we had it too.
Yeah, I don't like the fit either, and I don't understand why he's been mocked to the Pistons. We do need shooting, but we also need a lot of other things, and he's pretty repetitive in terms of what Luke Kennard can do. So I just don't see the point. I don't think he's the best, really close to the best player available out of our roster here, or is the guy that fits our need the best. So I think he'll be good. I like Tyler Hero. I think within the right system, 3 years down the line, he can be a really good NBA player. I think he does next to nothing for the Pistons next year, and pretty similar in 2 years. I think he's a guy that needs to fill out his frame and figure out some secondary moves and really figure out how to be an NBA defender. And that's going to take some time. He's only 19, I think. But, I think he probably should have went back to school a la Luke Kennard and just developed some of those skills and filled out his body a bit more. So I'm completely out on Tyler Hero. As a Piston, as an NBA player, I think he'll be very serviceable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just going to echo that. I agree. I think that – I honestly think that he's – I think you can comp him a little bit to Luke Kennard. I think he's just not as good with Luke Kennard's decision-making, passing ability, and kind of smarts once he finds himself into the paint. You didn't really see a ton of that when you watched, well, at least from what I'm watching Tyler Hero's game film. But, he provides outside shooting. Detroit is so in need of a guy that can create for himself and in order to get that look from outside, that I just don't think that, it would be a great situation for him or for Detroit moving, if he were selected by the Pistons. So, but there's another guy that does have that sort of ability to get into the paint, that athleticism that was supposed to be a top 10 pick going into last year, but now he's kind of slipped down the board a little bit. Joey Mack, I'm going to kick this one over to you. What are your thoughts on Romeo Langford, the freshman out of IU?
I really like Romeo. He has an NBA body. He has NBA moves. His shooting wasn't there his freshman year at Indiana. A big cause of that was, I believe it was a torn thumb ligament, which it just seems like it'd be impossible to shoot with that injury. It's all taped up in his film. So I think that the storyline on him coming into college was that he was a shooter. So I think that's something that will come to fruition at some point in time once that heals. So I don't have a major concern about his shooting. David, as you mentioned in the notes, he gets to the line 6 free throws a game. That's great. I mean, that's one thing that outside of Blake Griffin, the Pistons severely lacked, especially in terms of dribble penetration, is getting to the free throw line. So I think he's my guy. I like his size. He's got the wingspan. And so, is he a small forward? Probably not, but I think he's a really good, at this point in time, backup shooting guard with starting potential in the future. So I just think from a boomer, from a boom standpoint, he's my guy. I think he could be an all-star in the NBA in the right situation if he figures out that thumb problem. If he doesn't have that thumb problem and he shoots 37% from three and puts up 19 points a game, then you're looking at like a top 8 pick. So I really like Romeo Langford. I just think, unfortunately, he's not going to be there at the 15 spot.
Ryan, I think you wrote the article about him on Detroit Bad Boys. You want to kind of go into your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I agree mostly with Joe. Definitely, I think Joe is going with that at the end there is, Langford's going to probably be a top 10 pick. But if he is there at 15, he would be unequivocally the best player on the board, and the Pistons would be stupid, dumb, insane to not draft him because he's got a ton of potential. I think Joe said he does have pro-like moves. He's got, I wrote an article, a lot of his shots inside, and body contortions. He's, very good at, absorbing contact, getting the ball up to the rim, with his soft touch and getting tough shots to go. Pretty good free throw shooter, gets there a lot. I think that'll translate to the league probably, especially if he can, improve his 3-point shooting. I think that'll come. He'll be healthy, hopefully.
The stroke looks good too. Like it's like a little.
Well, it's okay
compared to like Kevin Porter Jr. I guess I'm kind of putting these two guys on a pedestal when it comes to like that boom or bust sort of narrative. But do you buy the fact that ligament injury is what severely caused such a dip or not a dip because he only played the one season, but something that a reason why he didn't shoot as well as people projected him to when he got to Indiana?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's hard to say.
I don't know if I buy it or not. It's hard to say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who knows? There's only probably a few people who really know for sure, but it could have just been. I think he started out first couple of games of the season. He was, his shooting numbers were a little better, but then I think during the Duke game, he may have just had a really bad game and his confidence went down the tubes and he never recovered. But he didn't allow the rest of his game to suffer. He's obviously good at a lot of other things. Pretty decent defensive player, a lot of potential there. He's got some length. He has some build to him. He's definitely already a strong guy. He's going to get stronger. He reminds me of Dwayne Wade a little bit. Obviously, a long way to go to get to that status, but his game kind of reminds me of that. He's got a developing mid-range game. Obviously, Dwayne Wade was a really nice mid-range shooter. But one of the things I wrote in the article the other day was I think Romeo, out of all the players in the draft, was number one in terms of, I don't know, 6 feet or inside or 8 feet or inside of, finishing at the rim, 64% or something like that. Maybe he was just the best out of the wings and the guards, but that's pretty telling that, he's, able to finish, and a lot of guys that are talented, that's the one thing they struggle with. They might be able to shoot from outside, but when they go inside, they can't really create, they can't finish, they don't know how to use glass, or, they just can't get their shots blocked a lot. And I didn't really see that a ton in the stuff I've read. And I saw Romeo play once in person this year. I went to a lot of Michigan basketball games in Ann Arbor. He didn't impress me that game, but you could tell he was talented just by a couple of the moves he made in the second half, and his athleticism. It's hard to say. You see him once in person and they have a bad game. It's easy to think,
Is that good?
Yeah, but then you got to think, you see him 2 weeks later on ESPN and he's scoring 20, and he, had a great one-on-one move and then made a floater in the lane, and it's like, wow, he has a lot of potential. So, recently reading more about him and watching more clips, my opinion of him has changed. During the season, I was like, oh, this guy can't shoot. He needs to go back another year, play another season. But now I'm thinking he's smart for going out because it's a weak draft. He'll probably be top 10 pick, and hopefully he lands on the right team that's willing to be patient.
Yeah, I haven't seen him slated that high. I've seen him, somewhere around like. Actually, ESPN's latest mock draft has him going to Detroit. I believe I see him going to Detroit at 15 from ESPN's latest mock draft. So, but at the same time, a lot of people move up and down the draft boards, especially this is going to be a crazy draft, I think, just based on, how much of a crapshoot it is after the top 4 guys. But we'll see. That would be another player that I'd be excited about, tentatively excited, just like I would be with Kevin Porter Jr. Honestly, there's no one that the Pistons could pick right now where I'd be like, all right, that's the guy. It just seems like it's so up in the air. And honestly, I think I've learned quite a bit over the past few years about how much I don't know when it comes to the draft, that it's like, I don't know. I'm not a scout. So, I kind of just leave it up to, the Pistons to sort of figure that situation out. But Joe, your college team growing up was the UNC Tar Heels. That's a fact, right?
Yep, it is.
You were rooting for them against Michigan State at the championship game that you were in attendance for. Now,
I did. Yeah, those were the Hansbrough, Ellington, Danny Green led Tar Heels, man. I was like kind of back and forth because there were a lot of Michigan State fans there because it was at Ford Field in Detroit. So I could have really went either way, but that was the peak of my fandom for North Carolina. In fact, I saw Tyler Hansbrough at a bar like a week and a half ago in Chicago. So I was like, is that Psycho T? And I asked my friend who's like kind of a fringe basketball player. He's from the South, but he's from the South and he like follows like college sports, and he's like, yeah, that's Psycho T. So fun
like, you don't approach Psycho T unannounced, but you don't know what's coming your way.
Definitely not. No,
especially at a bar.
Yeah, I just have flashbacks to his bloody nose when they played the Blue Devils. I think he got like elbowed or something. Something happened with Gerald Henderson, and he got all sorts of messed up. But yeah, so I think your segue, David, was into the next player that we're about to bring up here, highly touted out of high school, Nasir Little, out of North Carolina. He was McDonald's All-American, like top 5 recruit in the nation. Came off the bench for a very talented North Carolina team, so didn't get the minutes or the offensive volume that you'd like to see, that would really paint a better picture of what he brings to the table. We know he's a great defender, but I think he's jumping up a lot of draft boards at the moment, and there have been some rumors that if he does fall to the 15 spot, that the Pistons are interested. Ryan, do you have a take on him at all?
No, not really. No, I'm kidding. I like the kid a lot. I saw him play also in person. I wasn't impressed. However, that was one game. So
what game was that?
They were UNC at Michigan. I think it was November, really early in the year, the first 4 or 5 games of the season. Both teams kind of
figuring it out
who they are.
Figuring it out. And Little took a couple of long twos. Not the most, not the greatest shot in the world. So he didn't really do anything that stood out. I'd have to go back and look at his stats, but I think he ended up with 4 or 5 points in 15, 20 minutes. I'm not sure. But yeah, later in the year, he looked a lot more assertive, a lot more confident. He was making moves in the lane, using his length and his strength, kind of figuring it out. A lot of those young guys, it takes them a while to figure it out. And it definitely took him a couple months. I think he's a high ceiling guy if he can learn how to, shoot. But even if he was there at 15, if I was making the decisions, I would probably not draft him. But I don't know if he'll be there at 15, but there's the mocks. I think I've seen him as high as 11 or 12, and then as low as like 18. I don't know. Maybe you guys have seen different, but
I think I saw him even higher recently. And I remember Rod Beard, the beat writer for the Detroit News, had mentioned that the Pistons brought him in for a workout, and that he's one of the guys that, the projected lotto picks that probably won't be there, but the Pistons want to meet with him anyways. So I think there's a lot of speculation that he won't be there. A big part of that is he's like a above the rim athlete freak. He's also touted as like one of the best defenders, on ball defenders in college basketball. He's 6'7" with a 7'2" wingspan. So like he really does. He definitely seems like a guy that can play on the defensive end right away. Maybe, I don't know if this is fair, but like a Jimmy Butler-esque, like, can he figure out on the offensive side? Because he's like a bulldog on the defensive side. I know Joe's giving me a look right now. I'm not saying that. That's not like, I'm just speculating here.
I'm just visualizing it.
Oh, like the next
Jimmy Butler. I get where you're coming from.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not necessarily sure. I don't think he'll be there, but there's a chance, that he could be, and he fits from a physical frame perspective of all of the guys pretty much that we're going to be talking about. He really fits like the frame, the body size that Detroit desperately needs, because it's just really tough with this team on the defensive end. Once Stanley Johnson was out of town, there was really no one that could guard any physical 3-4 combo. It was just really tough for Detroit. So that's a guy that would at least be able to chip in on that side of the floor. But the offensive end, 27% from 3, 48% from the floor, which is okay. But the 3-point shooting, and especially on such low attempts, it's a little worrisome. But, who knows? These guys are young, and there's definitely time for these guys to develop, especially with Detroit's timetable.
My issue with him, at least next year, is the redundancy between him and Bruce Brown. Hopefully Bruce Brown can develop his offensive game and bring something to the table there. But I don't think Nasir Little is going to bring much of maybe some alley-oops, some fast break plays, but he's not going to bring you fully formed offense, as a main guy on that end of the floor. So I don't see the fit. I think he's going to be a really, really fun NBA player. And I think it's crucial that he gets in like the right situation, because he's going to be a high energy guy. He's going to be great on the defensive end. He's got really high character. That's, I've never met him, but that's what I hear. And so he's just the type of culture guy that you want on your team, that, we're seeing spread around the league that are like highly coveted, like Montrezl Harrell. Like, they don't grow on trees. So I think, a team's going to be really happy with him. And I just don't see, but I just don't see that team being the Pistons. I don't think it's a good situation for him, and I don't think it's the best situation for us.
Hypothetically speaking, Joe, Romeo's gone and he's there. Do you take him?
There's some other guys that we're going to discuss that I might take above him. I
forgot about that.
Based on potential, yeah, but
okay.
I don't know,
okay. Let's move on. So let's get away from like the top wings that at least I've seen from mock drafts. I'm sure everybody else has their own mock drafts that they're probably like, well, you're not going to talk about this guy. So maybe not. I don't know. It's my show. Our show, Joe. But let's take a quick break for our sponsor, and we'll be right back. All right, and we're back. So this guy is like, we got to talk about this guy. We just have to. We just have to talk about this guy because he could be there. His name is Bol, son of Manute Bol. He is 7'3" with a 7'6" wingspan and a 9'6" standing reach. Which if I had that standing reach, I could easily dunk. He's a freshman. He only played 9 games. In those 9 games, he averaged 21 points and 9 rebounds per game. He shot 56% from the floor, 52% from 3. That is not a typo. And 75% from the line. The biggest concern about him is that I mentioned he only played 9 games. That's because he suffered a stress fracture in his left foot, which is pretty scary for a big man. But this man was lighting the college basketball world on fire for the beginning of the season with what he was doing. And then it's unfortunate that he got hurt. But because of that, there's a chance that he's there for 15 Ryan, why should Detroit take him or not take him?
Yeah.
Did I just change your mind with that intro? Like,
that was pretty damn good. Yeah, that was pretty good. Yeah, it took my breath away. Bull. Yeah, I feel stupid because Pistons don't take him. He's definitely going to turn out to be an all-star, and if they do take him, he's going to turn out to be John Lure, except much taller and a better three-point shooter, but just very average NBA player. I don't know. He can't move laterally, which is a problem. I don't know if he'll ever be able to. So he won't be able to guard anybody, especially at the game now where he'll be guarding someone. Most likely it's going to be a pick and pop guy, or it can go around you, and he can't. You bring him away from the hoop, he's not very effective because he can't block any shots, or at least control the paint. So yeah, he's a really good shooter. Maybe one of the best shooters, maybe the best shooter in the draft. Maybe not the best, but the top 3 or 4. So he's definitely going to be around, but I just don't know if he's going to be playable. For more than 15, 20 minutes a game type guy. I could be underselling him a lot. Like I said, he could turn out to be an all-star, 12-year career. Trying to think of a player. You guys probably have somebody on your mind. I'm trying to think of a player that he compares to. Not
I saw
his dad.
I saw him comp to Rudy Gobert, but plus the jumper.
No.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like not there with like the wherewithal on defense, just in the fact of like. But I think what you're saying, Ryan, kind of proves the conundrum of Rudy Gobert, who's actually going to be due for a supermax because he made an All-NBA team this year. It's like, do you supermax a guy that in today's NBA, you might have to pull him in the fourth quarter if they're just running him dogged over these screens and getting him away from the paint? Like it brings that's like almost like a philosophical question. It is a philosophical question of like, do you invest in a big guy that really is only strength is that length? And I'm underselling Rudy Gobert. He's definitely more accomplished than that. But with with Bol, where his strength is really just his length when he's down in the paint, is that someone that you invest? We can talk about this draft being a crapshoot and that it's a 15 pick and it's not a lotto pick, but it's still a first round pick. So you don't want to just like, oh, well, it's not a fart in the wind. You don't want to just like kind of hope and pray that something happens. It's a philosophical question of, is that a guy that you want to invest in? Is that a guy that you want to spend a first round pick on? So I think it's definitely a fair question to ask. Joe, do you have anything on that?
Just Bol in general in a Pistons uniform.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm out. Yeah, no. I mean, dude, the injury is really scary, and like he's not Kristaps Porzingis. Like his game is like it resembles it in a way, but it isn't there, not even close. So I think that like there are too many areas of his game that you can exploit. Even if he is healthy, like defensively, offensively, and I just don't see it working out. Like year one, is he our backup center? And how many minutes can he play? Like how many minutes could Boban play because of his ineffectiveness on defense and the other team's ability to open up the floor and exploit that? Obviously, Bol is better at defense, but it's an experiment. And I guess there's a high ceiling, but there's a more likely, low floor. And I just don't. I would be really upset if we took him. Nothing against the guy. I wish he didn't get hurt. And I think this is another situation where if the right team picks him, he can fill out his body and work out and really rehab and make sure that his body's in the right place to be effective in the NBA in 3 years. But the Pistons just aren't the team. He will be a non-factor for us next year, in my opinion.
That's a good question. It's like, how much can he play? Also, you got to think about that injury. How much do you want him to play in his rookie year, knowing that he's still developing, his physical frame is still developing. No, good point. But no, I mean, I kind of want to kick this over to you, Ryan. Is there anyone that we're not talking about that we haven't talked about yet that we really should be talking about?
We're going to talk about Kelvin Johnson, right?
Yes, yeah. Well, that's the guy that was on the board. He was actually next in order. Is that a guy that you're excited about? High on?
How's that for a bad segue on my part?
Calvin Johnson. I was like,
oh, Calvin. Yeah, he's better than some of the players in the Pistons. That's for sure.
True. He's big.
Yeah,
is Calvin Johnson that you're excited? I mean, we don't have to go in the order of this list. This is just like, is that a guy that, or have we? Oh, have we hit your guy yet?
My guy?
Yeah, who do you want?
My guy is Jordan Poole, but you guys don't want to talk about him, I'm sure, because he's
no. I'm
kidding. I'm the only guy who would want to see the Pistons draft Jordan Poole.
Second round, right?
Second round, right?
Okay.
Even then, it's a flyer at that point. But no, I'm just being silly. Yeah, I like PJ Washington. He's not a sexy pick, but I think he's one of the guys that'll be there between 10 and 20, probably 10 and 15 or 10 and 16. That he's not going to be an all-star, but he's going to be very good. And I think I would bet a lot of money that he's going to end up being a solid starter in the league, a small forward. Obviously, his three-point shooting was improved, but this last year. But he's got an all-around game. He's got the high IQ. I think he's a high character guy. I don't know him personally, obviously, but from everything I hear and read, you could plug him in as a 15, 20 minutes a guy right away, I think. I think he played 2 years in school, and he's still not 21. He's got that age going for him. He's a guy that PJ Washington is a guy I like. Is a safe pick, but still somewhat of a high ceiling. But it's gonna be solid for a long time.
I'm actually with you now.
Yeah, you're high on. You like PJ as well, Joe. You were talking about him right before we recorded.
Yeah, I think that we draft for a really good role player, not draft for a guy that could be. And I mean, outside of Romeo Langford, these guys with these crazy boomer bust skills to potentially be an all-star, our go-to scorer 5 or 6 years into the future. I think we should just, be looking at a well above average role player. And I think PJ Washington's that guy. I mean, from a fit perspective, it just makes sense. He's a little undersized for a power forward, but he's got a really big frame and he plays big. I didn't watch enough to Kentucky to know if he can play this small forward position, but he's kind of got some Draymond Green in him. I think he can handle. He's good at a lot of things, not great at one or two things. He can shoot. He can handle the ball. He's just a basketball player. Yeah. And so I think that he can come in year one and be an effective power forward off the bench, which is something that we desperately need and can provide some depth. So I think there's a low risk with this pick, and I think he immediately comes in and makes an impact next year.
Yeah, for a future replacement for Blake, I think.
You think starter?
Yeah, I mean, when Blake's out of there next year, gets traded, which I think will happen. I think
breaking news over here, Ryan. You're ripping the hearts out of Pistons fans with your Luke Kennard.
I'm sorry, I feel bad for Blake. He's a top 12, 15 player in the league, and he's on Detroit, who has no direction, no leadership. Got a knucklehead for starting center, who's a good player, but you got knucklehead. You're surrounded by knuckleheads, Reggie and Andre, good guys, good people, just basketball players. Not Blake's just wasting his time, and he's right in his prime, or last couple of years of his prime. I don't know why I went off on a tangent about Blake. I love Blake.
No,
I hope he's playing on Toronto next year, or Philly, or OKC, or somebody who got a chance to win a ring. But
More,
PJ,
more
yeah, I
of
agree. Agree
sorry,
with everything Joe said. Yeah, about PJ.
yeah, but more of the story, like with you looking at this draft, is you're looking at guys for like the post Blake Griffin era to a degree.
Right, and I agree with your point. I think PJ will be a good small ball four. Maybe take him a year or two, but I think he has enough shooting to do that. You know, better shooter than Draymond. He's probably already a better shooter than Draymond Green. Draymond's a horrible shooter, but yeah, he's got that all around game, high IQ, just like Draymond. You know, Draymond might be a little more of a, for lack of a better word, a little gritty, a little sassy, but yeah, PJ's got some more skills than Draymond. But I think that's a good comparison. I hadn't actually thought of Draymond as a comparison for PJ, but there is a little bit of crossover there.
A lot of the offense was in that tournament when it was going through PJ Washington in Kentucky. Like he was forced to make decisions. He was the one that like you know, was surrounded by talent, but was one of the guys that was like very much clearly stood out on tape and was going off and really helped out his stock the way that he played in the tournament. He was excellent for those couple of weeks. And you know, I only really want to talk about a couple more guys. You know what? We're not going to get to Laz's guy, so we're going to just scrap KZ Okapala. Like you can go to DetroitBadBoys.com. Sorry, Laz, if you're listening to this, but I don't think anybody here wants to see the Pistons draft him, at least on the show right now. But another guy that you mentioned,
name though, got a cool name,
very cool name, and KZ, like that's awesome. But another guy that kind of reminds me in the sense of PJ Washington, high IQ, undersized power forward, the SEC Player of the Year, Grant Williams. I believe he's a sophomore, right? Out of Tennessee.
Junior, yeah.
Oh, junior, right? Junior. You know, he showed 18.8 points, 7.5 rebounds, 3.2 assists last year. He kind of did a little bit of everything. 33% from three. So a capable college 3-point shooter. Will it translate to the NBA? I don't know. But kind of like a guy that I think a lot of people, when they talk about him, it's the same thing. It's like he can play now and he's going to be a good player in the NBA. He might not have the highest ceiling, but he's going to be a contributor for years to come. I remember, Ryan, when you had messaged me in the email that you were really high on him and you've kind of come off of him a little bit. Is there a reason for that specifically?
Yeah, I think it's superficial reasons. I think, and you know, basketball players, they play basketball in their shoes, right? But you know, the combine or the measurements, he was in his stocking feet, and he's like 6'6". You know, not, you know, so even in shoes he's 6'7", let's say. You know, that can be okay for a small ball four, and you know, he can shoot J's and he can step out a little bit. He's a very smart player. Again, you know, I haven't met him either, but he's, you know, seems to be a good teammate. Coaches, teammates have great stuff to say about him. He's just an overall would be a solid pick. I don't know if he could play on the floor at the same time as Blake, because Blake's not really a center, but you know, I think he'll have a 12, 13, 14-year career, be a guy who can get, you know, a guy who in the for a playoff team can play minutes in the playoffs, because obviously even as, you know, rotations, you know, during the regular season, 9-10 guys, usually they shrink down to 7 or 8 during the playoffs. I think he's one of those guys that he won't be amazing, but he'll be a guy who's coming off your bench for years to come that can play playoff minutes, kind of like a Serge Ibaka type. And their games aren't really similar at all, but one of those type guys who can have a long career, and, you know, you might not have a starter caliber, you know, potential as, you know, Serge is a starter for a while, but a guy that can bring off the bench can win you some games, you know, by playing 20 minutes, 25 minutes off the bench.
Kind of how you see his role right now, Serge's role right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the Pistons, I guess, I don't know, I flip flop on him. I do like him a lot. You know, the times I watched the Volunteers, he was really good. He had a lot of good teammates too, though, so that helped him. That made him look better, I think. But he has a lot of moves inside. He's he can shoot over guys. He's got a fadeaway jumper. He'll dunk on you. Not super athletic, but he's not a stiff either. He's just rock hard. His body's rock hard. So
yeah, he's a beast.
He's if he was 6'9", 6'10", I would pencil him in as an all-star for 7 years. Unfortunately, he's 6'6", 6'7", but that's not to say size is everything. It's all about wingspan is key. Obviously, it's more key than height, but I don't know really how he fits with Detroit, but like you guys have been saying, if he's there, he probably top 2 or 3 best available. It'll be really funny if Romeo's there, Grant Williams is there, and let's say Little is there. Those 3 guys, all of them have, I think, somewhat of high ceiling, especially Romeo. That would be funny. What the Pistons would do with that, because there would be like too many options. Heads would explode. So
fans would go bananas.
Yeah.
They'd probably make the wrong decision.
Hopefully not. Come on, guys.
Hopefully not. Sorry. Is Grant Williams a guy that can play small forward, or is he strictly?
There's no way he can stick in front of a small forward.
No. Yeah.
He just doesn't.
His frame. He's so big and so physical, and so I just cannot imagine him staying in front of even like a Justice Winslow. Justice Winslow's a great slasher, but like not even a guy that like has a threat. Like, I'm going to take a step back. Like, Justin Winslow's going to do one thing. Like, it doesn't seem like Grant Williams is the type of guy that can stick in front of one of those guys, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
Joe, let's wrap this up with one last guy, Joe, a guy that you said to me that you're pretty high on, and this is either your option 1 or A or 1B, I believe. After, where does this guy rank? And I'm talking about Carson Edwards, point guard out of Purdue.
I don't know where he ranks. The problem with Carson Edwards is that he's mocked like at the beginning of the second round. So we'd be reaching for him at 15, but he's just not going to fall to us. Ideally, he's our pick in the second round. But he's just a bona fide bucket getter, man. I mean, if you watched him at Purdue, he's a scorer. He averaged not even 3 assists a game, so not going to be our facilitator off the bench, but I'm kind of post-Ish Smith era mentally already. Like, I'm there. I'm down to like pay our backup point guard a rookie contract and not have to dish out $7 or $8 million for a guy that is like, mediocre backup point guard material. I think Carson Edwards has the natural shot. Like, it's really pretty, and maybe I'm just mesmerized by his shot and just his overall fluidity on offense. I'm not sure, but he's pretty well built. He's kind of short, 6 feet, I believe, maybe in shoes.
6'1" is the measurement I saw, but yeah, he looks smaller than that.
Say 5'9", Ryan.
Yeah,
that sucks. But
yeah, I hate to say it. I've seen him play a couple times in person over the last couple of years. I know I've said that about 2 other guys, but Carson, being a Big Ten guy, he played, I think, 3 years at Purdue. He's tiny. To give you an example, Xavier Simpson on the Wolverines is about 5'10", 5'11", and I think Edwards, when they were standing next to each other, one of the games, Edwards is tad bit shorter, so maybe 5'10". Yeah. But you're right, though. He's a bucket getter. I think he'll have a long career. Kind of might be like an Isaiah Thomas type guy, current age Isaiah. And one of those guys who can maybe microwave off the bench type guy.
Lou Williams? Is that a fair comp? Yeah, I don't think he has a handle that Lou has.
No.
Lou's just so dirty at getting his own shot.
Much different game. His game reminds me a little, maybe it's just body, like how his body's built, of like DJ Augustine, but he's a little bit bouncier than DJ, and he's a little shorter than he is, but he's got the like Damian Lillard pull-up mindset on offense that I love. I think if he's 3 or 4 inches taller, then he's a top
10 pick.
lottery pick.
Yeah.
So many short guys are just feeling that right now. So many guys that could have been higher picks if they were just a little taller.
Yeah. So I guess if he's as short as you say he is, Ryan, and you've seen him in person, then I feel a lot lower on him. More low than I already felt at number 15. If somehow he fell to us in the second round, I'd scoop him up.
Yeah. Oh, if he's there at 45, Pistons would be silly not to. But I wouldn't let a couple inches sway your opinion because he is very talented. One of the more talented guys in the whole draft. Problem is, who's he going to be able to guard? And I know that like off the bench, a lot of bench players, especially guards, there's not a lot of defense being played, but he's going to have to be able to kind of guard somebody. But he's a guy. It might not matter if he's you play him a 5-8 minute stretch in the second quarter and he's on fire, and then you play him in the second half. You can give up some points if he's knocking down 40% from the 3-point line. So. Yeah, Carson's intriguing. At 40, I think Joe, I don't know, David or Joe, one of you guys said it, he'll probably be gone somewhere in the 30s. But if he did drop to 45, that'd be fun because I think we could say goodbye to Ish and feel that like, a combination of Carson or Bruce or Kyrie one of those guys can be a decent backup point guard.
Yeah, definitely. Is there anyone, before we get out of here, Ryan, is there anyone that you have focus in on in the second round for the Pistons who are picking at 45?
Yeah, I have a couple names. One of them is Zach Norvell Jr. out of Gonzaga. He's a shooting guard. He's a shooter, strictly a shooter, I think. Pretty athletic, but I think he played two years at Gonzaga. It's kind of surprising he went out. He should have stayed another year, but I think he's probably already 20. He's a name I would keep track of. One guy, I'm a big Jordan Poole guy, obviously. I think he'll be there at 45. I think he has NBA type skills. I don't know, he's a great passer. He's not much of a defensive player, but
he's athletic.
He's
athletic.
Yeah, very athletic. Has a lot of ball skills. Can get around you, but he also has deep range. Obviously, he's very streaky, and I don't think the system that John Beilein at Michigan, played was suited Poole. I think he would have been much better. His numbers would have been much better, more of a freelance style. So, like I said, under the right system, I think he'll have a good career. Or he could not ever make it. So he's a feast or famine. One other name, wouldn't be for the second round. It would be kind of a surprise pick, but Kevin Gelly out of Florida State. I think he only played 2 years at Florida State. He really came on last season. He's a 6'9". He can shoot. Pretty athletic. He's well built. I think he's a guy who'll have a long career. I would actually, if I had to pick one guy who would be drafted late first or somewhere in the second that would turn out to be an all-star or a very, very good player, Kevin Gelly would be one guy. So I don't really know how that suits him to the Pistons because they're not, they're 15 or 45. He's going to be drafted somewhere in between there. But you never know. Maybe they like him. And I have seen him as high as 20. 15 is a little bit of a stretch, but we'll see. And
yeah, you don't see it as much in the NBA like as you do in like the NFL, but there are chances that you could move back, right? Like if there's somebody that is there at 15 that another team really, really likes, and Detroit's like, we don't really have too much tie to this pick right now. That could be a possibility where they get, a lower first round pick and maybe a future second, knowing that they pretty much traded away all their future seconds. Right. So. There are avenues for this type of stuff and precedents for it before. So, well, no, this was good. I think. Can
I throw out two more names, David?
Oh, yeah, go ahead, of course.
Point guards. I won't talk about them, but two names. Jared Harper out of Auburn. He'll definitely be there at 45, I'm sure. He's on some draft boards, he's in the 50s. He's 5'11". He's probably closer to 5'9", just like Edwards, but he had a really good junior year at Auburn. I think he's a junior. And you can really shoot really fast. I mean, when you're that size, you got to be fast and you got to be able to shoot, or you're not going to be able to make it. There's not very many Ishmaels in the league who can't really shoot. But yeah, Harper can shoot, and then the other guy, Shamori Pons from St. John's. He's a little taller. Times I've seen him play on TV, he's been really impressive. He's very streaky, however, and he's, I don't know if he's going to be able to get to the basket in the pros, but he's a very good shooter. Somewhat of a future family defensive player. He's a guy that will be there at 45, I'm sure, as a backup point guard possibility for, the Pistons. So those two names, Harper and Pons, I think Detroit would be nicely served to draft one of those guys if they're there.
I am hoping Detroit does cue in on a point guard, probably with that 40 pick number 45. It's just very clearly a position of need with this team. So, I'd rather have them pick that up than center, where I think you can find someone serviceable, on a vet minimum contract, better than Zaza. I think you can take a better swing at center than what Detroit was able to do this past year. So, yeah, definitely. Well, thank you, Ryan. I don't know. Do you have anything else for us, or Joe? Do you have anything that you want to chime in on, or?
No, I mean, one guy I would like to mention in the first round is possibly Cameron Johnson out of North Carolina. I do have issues with his potential defense. Is he a power forward or small forward? He's a big guy, but he's got a thin frame. But he's the best shooter in the country, and that his stroke will immediately translate to the NBA. So somebody to keep in mind, possibly at the 15 spot. But other than that, that's really all I got.
Well, let's hope that we talked about one of the guys that the Pistons are drafting, because we went about it as deep as we can with the wings, the non-wings, and then even going into the second round. So, I'm going to have to re-listen to this to kind of take my own notes. But thank you, everyone, for Ryan, for coming on the show. And we'll be, we'll all be watching on June 20th and hopefully find that diamond in the rough, and hopefully they'll hold on to him this time in Detroit. But Ryan, you mentioned it. You're on Detroit Bad Boys at Prava 88. And you can follow us on Twitter as well, on Inside the Cylinder, Inside the CYLNDR. And I guess we'll be catching everyone here soon. But
thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks, Joe.
Of course.
Yeah, appreciate it, man.
All right, peace.
Peace.